You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody. Hi, and welcome back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the Camino de Santiago edition. And hard though it is for me to believe, we're now into our third week. And today we've got days 14, 15, and 16. Somebody actually wrote to the show and asked me where we get our water. Well, to be honest with you, we're not drinking as much water as we should do. Quite a few of the towns have fountains for people to fill their water bottles up. And I do that. But I must say, Emma isn't drinking anywhere near as much water as she should do. We drink a bit too much beer, possibly, and probably not enough water. And we have coffee as well. But I try to drink as much water as I can. I always try to fill up when I leave. I've got one of these Nalgene bottles. I try to fill up when I leave in the morning. And I try to ask her to drink water. And she does sometimes, but really not enough. But I don't think there's any real problems in getting water because, you stop in so many towns and, I often do get water, which I fill my bottle up with either, as I say, in these fountains or at some of the bars. I sometimes get a bit of extra water. So that's really how we get that water. And now, by the way, I meant to tell you also, we are now committed to get back home and finish on the Saturday, the 10th of November. We've actually booked a flight, which was a bit risky. The flight is from Santiago at about 5:10 on that Saturday afternoon. So our plans to get back on time, we've just got to keep these miles going. And as you can see this week, these last 3 days, we've done pretty well on those miles. But you can hear that right now by our best day of all, day number 14, coming up right now. Day 14, and we had a walk from Burgos, which was at mile 175.7, to Hontanas at mile 195.7, which meant this was our first 20-mile day. We felt it. We got 4.55 miles credit, so we're now in total credit of 2.9 miles, which is not bad. And it was an extraordinary walk out of Burgos. The cathedral is, it's just extraordinary to see. The size of this thing and how grave it all is in there. It's magnificent and dark and, I don't know, at the same time. And then the university itself, what a place to be educated. Burgos is a truly, truly beautiful town. We went then along a quiet, flat gravel path and the colours were changing. It was a beautiful, beautiful morning. We met up with Martha and Tim in Tardejos. They're a lovely couple we met before from Portland. Very enthusiastic about the trail. We sat in the sun and had a couple of beers. Emma and I are definitely on a bit of a pub crawl. I mean, it's beautiful, absolutely love it there, but we are definitely having a drink on the way. Then, when we left then, and the wind really, really kicked up, and another 3 or 4 miles of the Meseta. Many people seem to want to miss out on the Meseta, but I find it to be glorious. Long, stretching hills with the wind whipping across, and lucky at our back for a lot of the day. It looked like Emma was being blown about so hard. She said, "It's lucky I got this pack on, otherwise I'd be blown across the field like tumbleweed." We arrived at Hornillos del Camino, a very pretty and tastefully restored old town. The cafe was full of our fellow hikers, several of whom had decided to call it a day and stop after about 13 miles. And to be honest, we could have stopped. But I found what looked to be a really good place in Hontanas, a further 7 miles across the Meseta. It was wonderful, though. My legs were pumping hard and my feet remained in check, probably helped by 2 doses of ibuprofen and several beers. I know I shouldn't be taking too much ibuprofen, but frankly, it does help the pain go away. And the beers, well, they always help that as well. There were several sweeping ups and downs, for we suddenly dropped down into this beautiful, beautiful little town. Emma kept saying, "Where is this bloody town?" And suddenly we came to it. The streets were swept, the rainwater flowed off the mountains through this really intricate drainage system. Even the church was super, super bright and welcoming. One thing you couldn't say about the magnificence of Burgos Cathedral was that it was especially welcoming. The church in Hontanas was just as welcoming as the rest of the village. It was beautiful. Our rooms at the Villa Hontanas in Hontanas, great name, Villa Hontanas in Hontanas, were neat, small, and very, very clean. There was no bath, but I guess you can't have everything. And the hotel was associated with the Albergue El Puntido just back up the road, so we headed there for dinner and we met an American guy from Texas called Travis and his Swiss wife. I think her name was Marine. I'm unsure about that. They actually met on the Camino in 2012 and became friends. And then they fell in love, married last year. Ah, how sweet they were. This was their delayed honeymoon. Ain't love grand? How about that? 20 miles. And that was quite a day. And to have ended at that beautiful, beautiful town, Hontanas, and stayed at that lovely place, Villa de Fontanas, that was a real icing on the cake. But 20 miles did seem a long, long time. And while we were very happy that we'd done this, I can tell you, we knew we were going to suffer for it the next day. And you know what it's like when you hike? You get into a sort of rhythm, and we just didn't really get into that rhythm the next day. But let's hear about that, which is day number 15. Day 15, Hontanas, which is mile 175. No, it's not. It's Hontanas, mile 195.7 to Itero de la Vega, mile 208.1. Just 12.4 miles, which means a 3.05 debit, which means a total overall debit of 0.15 of a mile. It's not too bad. Having produced our best day the day before, we really hoped that we're going to be putting in another great day, but Emma's cold had deepened and my foot was hurting a bit. I was starting to get a bit of a blister underneath, the bottom of my foot. It's not a good place for it. But because we'd done so well the day before, I felt that if we needed to, we could stop short if we did have to. And, well, in the end, that's what happened. Now, it's certainly cooling down, and today it was in the mid-40s Fahrenheit as we set off. Typically British, I'm just wearing a shirt in the hope of quickly warming up. It normally works, but today I really had to push myself to get that body circulating, get the blood circulating around my body. And today was all about Castrojeriz, I think it's called, or Castrojeriz, as my lovely other niece Laura refers to it. It's an amazing, dominating presence in the flatness all around it. You approach it from whichever angle you look at it, it looks extraordinary. It looks like somebody's come down and lobbed this huge pile of earth there and put this castle on top of it. And as we were approaching it, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Climbing out of Hontanas, we followed a lovely bending path that took us to a small village. I think it was called St. Anton, where we had our first break and bumped into a couple of very friendly American friends we'd seen over the past 150 miles. Tim and Martha from Portland, Oregon. I actually mentioned them yesterday. They are so great into their hike, and Martha is very, very optimistic about everything. Tim's shown a bit of a preference for cycling the Meseta, though. He would rather be cycling right now. We set off towards the towering presence of Castrojeriz, which just rises above absolutely anything around it. It's majestic. And we could see the fortress. We were taking pictures all the way. And the light was so glorious that day. There's a lovely church on the outskirts, and we went inside to just marvel at this church. And as I've said to you before, some of these churches, you can understand, well, I can understand why the church is so powerful within these communities, because the church is normally the highest part of the community. And thinking back to some of them built 300-400 years ago, thinking how magnificent they must have been with the small houses all around them. But I went in there and it had been turned into a kind of museum. We had to actually pay, I think it was $2 each to have a look around, which we did. And even though I'm not religious, I sat there and I thought about stuff, and I even lit a candle for somebody very dear to me. We took advantage of another break before leaving Castrojeriz and followed a long path that took us up and over this big hill in our way. We were rather hoping we'd be going to the left where there's another town, so we could have had another cup of coffee and a beer. But no, it was straight up a hill. And it was a 1 in 8 hill over a kilometre. And it really tested our strength. Eventually we reached the top and we were presented with what the Meseta is all about. Miles and miles and miles of flat wheat fields stretching out in front of us. It really did take our breath away, and I think it would do you if you saw it. But so did the ascent. So did the descent. And it was just knee-jarringly awesome as the ascent had been. As I reached the bottom of this steep path, I looked back up to where Em was really struggling, and I waited for her. When she reached me, we turned to see an utter lunatic propelling himself down the mountain on his bike at an incredible rate of knots. He flew past us, and I cannot imagine that he needed to pedal for about another 5 miles. So fast was he going. What an idiot. Some of these guys, I mean, I love that we share the path with them, but really, let us know you're coming. It should be mandatory that there should at least be a bell on these bikes. But no warning at all. He just flew down the mountain. It was amazing. The day warmed up, and we knew that we weren't going to get much further than Terra de la Vega. As we sat in the bar, which was a little grim to say the least, I invoked the great Sundance Kid when he said to Butch, "This may be the Atlantic City, New Jersey of all of Bolivia right now." Though, of course, I was referring to Terra de la Vega. Turns out I was right. I went to look at a couple of other albergues, and they were a shambles. One was actually closed. The other one was a complete shambles. And so where we were was as good as it got. So I snagged a couple of okay rooms, and our day was finally done. Once again, we were able to get our own room, but the shower wasn't great. The toilet moved around a bit. But it was a double bed. It was clean sheets, so we were good to go, and had a decent night's sleep. So that was a bit of a disappointment. We didn't make that distance. And as I said earlier, we're now committed to be at the finish by the 10th of November. I didn't really want to rush this, and I don't feel like we're rushing it, but we're definitely putting in more miles than we would otherwise have done, I'm sure, doing it this way. But you know what? I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, we stop enough. The walking's easy enough. We've got injuries and we are hurting quite a bit right now, but it really isn't the end of the world. And, you know, you can get over these blisters. They hurt, they burst, but eventually they seem to heal up, I guess. I've got some Compede on it right now, and hopefully that's going to keep me safe. And now I've had this bath also tonight, I should be okay. But now let's hear what happened on day number 16. And I've already given away that I had a bath, so you know we've slept somewhere quite nice on day 16. But it didn't work out once again quite as we'd expected. Let's hear about it. Day 16, Itero de la Vega, mile 208.1 to Villalcazar de Sierga, mile 225.8, which is 17.7 miles on the day, 2.25 miles credit, which is a 2.1 mile total credit. So we're ahead of the game again. But that, of course, doesn't tell the full story. I've been telling you that Emma has been happy to rough it, as she calls it, if she can stay somewhere decent the next night. And if there's a bath at the end of the day, she is all for it. Well, when I was looking for somewhere to stay today, this place, Villalcazar de Sierga, seemed about on the button. It was another 17 or 18 miles, and while my blister at the bottom of my foot was now giving me a few problems, I felt that the winning combination of a couple of ibuprofen along with a few beers would get me through the day. I hadn't realised how cold the day was going to begin, so after an early breakfast in our previous night's Atlantic City, New Jersey, of bread, jam and coffee, we headed out into the early morning gloom. It was 38 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 3 degrees Celsius. It was frickin' freezing. Even I put on a couple of extra layers as we headed further into the Meseta. As we left the town, we noticed a cold line of blue in the sky, topped by a line of pink, then a white cloud. It was unlike any sky I'd ever seen before. Then the sun started to light up the fields ahead of us, turning everything golden as it appeared above the hill behind us. Soon I was just back in my shirt as we climbed the only real climb of the day. By 10 we reached Boadilla del Camino for a quick stop. Leaving that little town, we then followed the river that boasted Camino de Santiago en barco, or the Way of St. James, by boat. Apparently, there is a boat that picks up spare pilgrims between Wednesdays and Mondays. In other words, every day other than Tuesday. Well, we followed that river for quite a while and we did not see a single boat. Along the way, the colours of autumn were everywhere and it was lovely to be on the trail. And we really enjoyed that part by the water. We crossed a lock and we then got to a place called Meseta. And Em and I started to think seriously about where we'd actually be staying the night. We'd identified the town we wanted to get to, so I checked out a couple of albergues in the place that, we eventually reached, but they were both full. So what to do now? Now, knowing my darling niece's desire to sleep posh if possible, I found a place which was a converted monastery that would have given us another 20-mile day, so I booked it and we were committed. Being committed, of course, doesn't mean you can make it. I knew pretty much straight away that I'd be struggling, so I downed another ibuprofen and got to it. We'd been joined by a very cool Aussie called Kane. We headed for another long straight road that we hoped would lead us to a bar. Disaster. We got to the next town, and hard to believe in Spain, let me tell you, there was nothing. Luckily, a couple more miles found us a rather rural bar that at least enabled us to eat yet another sandwich. But we were accompanied by an ass that wanted to eat Kane's food, a couple of aggressive geese who were crapping all around us, along with a couple of big dogs who, when we turned down their eager request for our food, simply pissed on Kane's backpack. It was quite amusing later to see him gently trying on his hat, sniffing all the while. I was really struggling now and didn't think I'd make it, but as always, in whichever trail you're talking about, the trail provides. In the next village, the barmaid has a card of a taxi cab. So I got her to call the bloke, get into our bar, take Emma and me to our place for the evening, which was about 3 miles along the road further. So, even though we went 20 miles today, 3 of it was by car. Then he promised he'd return tomorrow morning to take us back to where we'd walked. I'm very strong on making sure we go back to it. Happy days as far as I'm concerned, though I'm not desperately looking forward to driving a few miles backwards tomorrow. Still, it feels really good to have had that bath tonight. So here we are in this converted monastery, and Emma and I had intended to do a kind of 2-week catch-up. Well, that's just going to have to wait again. We are just so exhausted by the end of each day. I'm sure, and I've said this before, I think, people think this is a walk in the park. I'm pretty much tired out by the end of the day, and the opportunity to lie down on my bed on unquestionable sheets, as I always call them, and have a bath and clean myself up, it just knocks me right out. So we haven't been able to do that tonight. But I tell you, we're doing pretty good. We're about halfway, I guess, in terms of mileage. We're definitely upping our miles. In this last few days, we've done about 50 odd miles. So we're keeping that average up quite nicely. And each day brings its own challenges. My foot is concerning me, and Emma's cold is not very nice, to be honest with you. And I know she's suffering, but she never ever complains about, not feeling like she can't do it. And as long as we can keep putting one foot in front of the other for that period of time, we should get there in the end on time. But I'm loving it. I tell you, I'm just loving this. This is a wonderful place to be. We've met tons of lovely people who are just enjoying the trail the way you should enjoy any trail, just being out, meeting other people, being open to conversations with people, and just generally enjoying just being out in the open. And we're certainly doing that. All right. So we'll see you next time. And you never know. We might have had our conversation about our reflections so far. Okay. Emma and I will see you soon.